What is up, guys? It is Dave, it's Duncan, it is Kyle, back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. For this review, Duncan, Kyle and I have been checking out the new album from New York sludge band Hush. The band's new album, The Pornography of Ruin,
which was basically my 2020. And it's entire. That's how I would encapsulate it. Some people went with the Chinese New Year and were like, it was the year of the dog. No, mine's was the year of The Pornography of Ruin, where I'd watched so much porn and no longer got me up. So... It's been a couple of weeks since we recorded, guys.
Yeah.
This is the first time we've all sat down together.
Bear with us. The new album's out on June 24th. This is album number 3 from Hush, which follows up their 2018 album Untitled 2. The Pornography...
Fucking love it, man.
Pornography of Ruin was engineered at the band studio Howl Audio Environment in Hudson, New York by frequent collaborator Ryan Slowey and was mastered by Jack Shirley at Atomic Garden in Oakland, California.
Nice.
Thematically, the record focuses on the concept of personal destruction and transformation, drawing heavily from vocalist-lyricist Charles Cure's experiences in the aftermath of a 2016 car accident that left him hospitalised and unable to walk for several months. With past Hush material, we always tried to write songs that captured a sense of impending disaster at a macro abstract level, but at a remove from our personal lives. With The Pornography of Ruin, given the environment we found ourselves in, that approach didn't seem useful anymore, so we took those same ideas and personalised them on a deep level. I think the songs really communicate the feelings of helplessness and loss that were pretty universal to our experience of the last few years. So, Hush, I was aware of Hush. I'd heard of this band before. I actually reviewed...
He's always heard of everything, isn't he?
I'd reviewed one of their albums. I reviewed their 2014 album, Unexist, back in the day, back in the old Rock and Roll Reviews days. So I was looking forward to checking this out when I saw it came in. I actually hadn't heard their last album, Untitled 2 from 2018. So I was looking forward to hearing like what they'd sounded like now, because I hadn't heard them for so long. And it was quite an interesting jump from Unexist to this album. If you've never heard Unexist before, it was a far more direct sounding album, very riff led, full of like huge kind of sludge soaked riffs, very abrasive vocals, still, you know, a little bit of atmosphere and experimentation now and then, but nowhere near as much as there is on this album, The Pornography of Ruin. Had I listened to Untitled 2 though before hearing this, then this album makes more sense. This album is by far the most diverse Hush have sounded. It still has those big kind of colossal moments of sludge and post-metal, but it's definitely way more atmospheric than anything they've done in the past. This is how I would describe as Hush at their most kind of expansive and kind of dynamically kind of varied. There's a ton of exploration here, texturally, especially with the melodic side of their sound. There are huge kind of sections of stripped back clean guitars, coupled with synths and a more kind of like almost kind of like minimalist vocal style. But what that kind of means on this album is when they do switch from that kind of more tranquil side of their sound into the kind of pummeling kind of sludge that we're used to, it's pretty direct. I mean, it hits you pretty hard. It has that like kind of wall of sound effect, where you just kind of like, whoa, you kind of sit up bolt kind of upright in your seat as it kind of smashes you around the ears. But I also think that because the album kind of weaves in and out of these kind of long passages of kind of light and shade, it's definitely a more kind of slow burn album. It wasn't an album that like kind of instantly grabbed me, and you know, I wasn't like humming the songs afterwards. It's definitely got like a kind of depth and a complexity to it that requires a bit of patience, and a bit of kind of time for it to kind of fully soak in. It's not as an instant an album as Unexist for me. I needed, it was probably about listen 3 or 4 when I kind of started to almost kind of comprehend what they were kind of going for on this one. And as much as I loved Unexist, I'm kind of glad they didn't just release another Unexist. They've clearly tried to be a bit more experimental in their approach and in their arrangements. It's not an album that moves through predictable patterns or song structures, and because of that, it's definitely one to listen to as a full album. Like I don't think you would really get the kind of full effect by listening to a couple of singles from this. I think each track kind of has its reason for being there, and it kind of makes more sense when you listen to it as one piece. I think like one thing that I've noticed with a lot of kind of like doom and sludge and post metal is it can be quite a difficult thing to gauge in terms of like the runtime. Like as genres, they feel that they can be quite repetitive, in the tempo and the rhythm, those particular styles. So I think you have to be very careful how long you let an album like this run on. Now I think they've done a good job in keeping the album kind of varied in intensity, so it doesn't feel like overbearing in that way, but I do feel the album is slightly bloated at 56 minutes. It's an album you need to kind of set time aside for, but I did feel like some tracks felt their length, if you know what I mean. Some were maybe a bit too long, in my opinion. At times I did feel myself kind of zoning out a little. That being said, I really enjoyed the album Closer. I think is one of the best tracks on the album. I really enjoyed the kind of come down on that track. It like gradually moves from like the opening of these kind of like big colossal riffs, roaring vocals, and then it goes into something a lot more clean and almost kind of placid musically, but they keep the vocals very kind of savage throughout that, which was really cool. So as a closer, I really enjoyed that. Production is excellent. I thought it sounds very organic. I think the guitar tone in particular is really interesting on this one. It's sludgy, but it's not like too overdriven. Like it's got a nice kind of clarity to it in the tone, but it's still got that kind of weight that you'd expect from like sludge or post metal, which was pretty cool. This was definitely a bit of a kind of grower for me. Not as instantaneous, as I said, as something like Unexist, but I get the feeling that it's not really supposed to be. It did feel its length, as I said, so I think like I need to be in a particular headspace to listen to it, but each time I listened to it, it kind of pulled me in a little bit more each time. So there is definitely something intriguing about it that I kind of, when I went back to it, I was like, oh yeah, there's little bits that I started to kind of notice, on the kind of repeat listens. What about you guys? How did you get on with this, Duncan? Had you heard Hush before, or was this first time?
First time for me, so I cannot remember them from back then, and more than likely you did pass me on the album, but sorry.
It's all right, Duncan.
I've been busted a whole 8 years on. I genuinely did not know what to expect from this. Even by the end of the first track, I didn't know what to expect from this. Yeah. And you are right, it's one where like I've essentially condensed what would have been a 3-week listen of this, which I think everyone else logically did, into 2 days. And I still don't necessarily think I've fully disseminated everything that they're doing on the album, if I'm honest. And that's maybe to their credit. I think it's not an easily accessible listen, but at the same time, I think it's not off-putting either. It's not to the point where you're listening to going, well, there's just so many things happening now, I'm lost. Yeah. It's an album that really, really, really experiments with its space, specifically in the song length. And it almost becomes kind of doomy in that environment of, right, this is our central riff, and we're going to continue this on, and we're going to bring elements in, but then we're going to start to fade them out again. And I like that. I like that use of space on these songs. Especially, I personally think they used it for the right reasons. And most of those points when they came in, it was more to inject almost this kind of melancholic sort of melody and sadness and at times just atmosphere. Really, really, really well. And it's peppered throughout almost every song, but other songs, the ones with longer run times, are the ones that are quite happy to have a 3-minute instrumental intro or a 2-minute, outro, which is all instrumental as well. Also, like the composition. This is an album that very much feels like it has been crafted in such a way where the songs make sense in order in which they play. So it's conceptual that way.
Yeah.
Track 1 finishes moving straight into track 2. It's the perfect setup into track 2. You get something similar between tracks 5 and 6. And even track 7 itself, the final track, At Night We Dreamed of Those We Were Stolen From, has motifs that link it back to the first track, I Am Without Heaven and A Law Unto Myself. So, there's craft here. There's time and consideration being put into the songwriting, the structure, the flow. Overall, this is an album that doesn't go out its way to necessarily mix too much of a kind of a pace or tempo change.
Yeah.
But weirdly, in the same way that something like 40 Watt Sun that we reviewed at the start of the year didn't do that either, I found it actually drew me in to the vibe of the album rather than was something that I was like, oh, I just feel like I've been listening to the same pace over and over again.
Yeah.
And that's down to the credit of the music around what's happening here. That, like, the musicianship, specifically the guitar work, it's kind of awesome. The guitar tone goes from a kind of heavier vibe, but then they layer up. They've got really cool effects on here. Where the guitar, at first I was convinced it was a synth sound, but it's actually the guitar with some sort of reverb or delay on it. That I loved. The synth work that you mentioned before, whether it's playing just pianos or kind of stringed atmospherics, once again builds the sound out. Vocally, this is raw. You know what I mean? Really, really, really raw. Like, as in, like I have toothache and I can't stop touching the bad tooth with my tongue, sort of raw. You know what I mean? Just that way where you kind of wince a little bit when you're listening to it, but there's something that keeps pulling you in.
Yeah.
Weirdly, vocally, it reminded me of a really early Max Cavalera.
Right.
Like, just not with an accent or anything, but just that kind of vocal ferocity. It's just like Max, whether you love him or loathe him as a vocalist, has always had a tone that, like, no producer ever is really going to clean that up. There ain't no techniques, effects, or boards out there to do that. It just always sounds like they've been like that. Just let them. You do you. And that's kind of where this comes in. And it actually, in a lot of respects, works incredibly well with the sound, because the sound at times is so roomy and atmospheric and, sprawling. And then you get this vocal line that is in stark contrast to that. It's direct, it's raw, and it's to the point. It's focused. And I think that's the beauty of those tracks having the length. And I will agree with a lot of what you said, and I'll swing back to in a second. But those sections that open up into huge sections of atmosphere are then brought right back in dramatically when the vocals kick in. Every single time. They're brought into focus very, very, very sharply. So you kind of feel like you're weirdly, the way, like, if you used to watch an old VHS, for the old people out there, and the tracking would start to go, you'd have to fucking fix the tracking, it would be out of focus, then in focus. That's kind of what this album did to me as a listener. Like, there are sections where I could feel myself drifting away, and then you'd be brought back into a very sharp focus with the vocal line. I love the production. I think my only criticism, and it's a criticism I've used on at least 2 albums this year, is that the synth sound for the piano is too loud in the mix compared to everything else. And that's, that could be they directly want that, but when it's used on the very first track and the guitar riffs come in, the piano is louder than the switch to the guitars, which to me should be the other way around. When those guitars come in, I should be like, holy fucking shit. And I wasn't quite. So I just, small thing that's a gripe with me and no cunt else. In terms of the song length, On the first listen, not an issue for me. On the second listen, not an issue for me. On the third listen, started to become a bit of an issue with me. And it's mostly because the tracks that do run long, it is that kind of doomy, we're going to repeat the same motif over and over again. The longest track on here is track 4, By This Are You Truly Known. And the end of that track is almost about 5 minutes of instrumental, and it never really moves away from its core. Yes, there's some elements to add in. Yes, there's a little bit of progression, but not enough to merit a 5-minute instrumental close. Yeah. That to me is a bit of an issue. Conceptually, if that's how they're approaching the album, it's a difficult one to argue against, because in the right context, and having never seen Hush before, if they're doing this as a kind of audio-visual element, then this is going to work like 100%. But I need that visual element to keep my attention on what's happening. It was one of the things that mentioning a band who went on a similar journey and actually wrote an album for a similar reason. When Mastodon released Oblivion. What was the name of the album again? Crack the Sky. When they did Crack the Sky, I remember when Oblivion was released as a single, people were like, this is fucking 8 minutes long. What the fuck are we doing here, Mastodon? This is far too long, and it's like too repetitive and all. And I saw them on that tour. And they had the full visual project with them, and they played the album in its entirety, and I'll tell you right now, it felt like it lasted 20 minutes, even though it lasted an hour. It felt like, because of everything they were doing and how it merged together and how it molded, and that visual element with the audio element just gave me something constantly to draw my attention to the songs. So I don't know if Hush do this sort of thing. If that is the case, conceptually speaking, the longer run times maybe not an issue. It does limit the amount of times I'll come back to it. Yeah. It's like very much like the 40 Watt Sun argument again, is it's a great album, but I only ever listen to it at night, and only when I'm not really it's not a kind of I need to concentrate on these spreadsheets. Not that I do that. I need to concentrate on these spreadsheets. 40 Watt Sun will help. Wouldn't do that. But, on the flip side, if it's I've had a manic day and I need to just chill out and decompress, it's the perfect album for that. So the Pornography of Ruin, in a lot of respects, is an album which isn't just even necessarily a mood piece for me, but it's a kind of time and place mood piece. Yeah. And that's not a bad thing. I like albums that have that, that kind of niche value of I will only ever listen to you really when I know these certain set of circumstances align together in order for me to take the value from what you've done, as opposed to just casually throwing it on the background. But I do feel it's a difficult one, because they've said it themselves, there is a theme and purpose to what they've released here. So that, from a musician's point of view or from an artist's point of view, justifies the runtime of those tracks. From a listener point of view, it becomes quite daunting on repeat listens. I think there are a couple of tracks here that could be served really well by chopping a minimum of 2 minutes out, whether that's a minute on the start or a minute on the end. It's really well written though. I mean, it all holds together much better than it should, and it never gets to the point where even those longer sections feel, like pure self-indulgence. Yeah. You know what I mean? It never gets to that point where it becomes, this is my art. Yeah. And on that level, it's never done under pretense. If anything, it's, I get where they're trying to go, and I get the story that they're trying to tell, and I'm there with them. It's just like I can't I couldn't spin this album twice back to back. I had to give it, I had to play at least one or two things in between, of much shorter length, to then come back to it. But it's a great, as a first experience of Hush, they can count me as a fan. I thought there were so many elements in here that are in my wheelhouse of what I enjoy. So, and they do it really well. And it's a great song, a great album title as well, because it has the word pornography in it, which I love. And had I known the tragic story and the setup, I wouldn't have cracked that joke at the start. Feels ill-timed. Thanks for the heads up, Dave.
No problem. Kyle, what did you think?
For a band called Hush, they sure do make a lot of noise.
Yes. Yes.
True that.
I love the production on this. It was very raw, very natural, just my type of thing. So that's
Very
nice.
Kyle.
Yeah.
Very me, yes. Listen to the songs I put out with all the synths and all that shit. That's definitely very raw now. I mean, you're not wrong. This is a slow burn album for sure. This is definitely a grower, not a shower, right?
It's just all about the dick tonight. It's amazing.
Everywhere. It's just, it took me a good couple of listens to actually get into it and appreciate it for what it is. Not saying it's not accessible, but I think it's going to take most people that are not a fan, like, they got to give it the chance it deserves. Because if you're just giving it a casual listen, it's going to be completely lost on you.
Yeah.
So I think you gotta give it the time of day, and like you said before, put aside some time for the album and listen to it. Don't just have it on in the background. I mean, you probably can have it on in the background because it's very ambient and all that stuff. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed it on the fourth, fifth listen. But getting to that fourth and fifth listen, sometimes I think I agree with Duncan on a few things. It was like, get past it every now and then. But I mean, once you get into it and you realize what they're trying to do, it works better. But every now and then, on the first couple of listens, it was like, okay, we know this riff, it's nice, but this is the 17th time and I've had enough. But it wasn't that bad. I like the way it goes through movements of heavy and ambient, and they don't seem to, they keep you guessing in a way, like you can kind of sense something is coming, but sometimes it's more calm than you'd expect, and sometimes it's not. Like there's one section in Above Your Head They Close Like Giant Wings. I love these song titles, by the way. They're like little stories in themselves. I love them. They're great. In the midsection of that song, it's like they still got a little bit of crunch on the guitar and stuff, but very clean, atmospheric sort of other guitars in the lead, and the dude's like screaming in the background, and it's not quite what you'd expect. You expect them to go super clean again, but they didn't. They kept a bit of dirt in there, which was good to hear from me. So again, I already mentioned the production. That guitar tone, fuzzy as fuck. Fucking loved it.
It's really cool.
It's just nice, yeah. What happens when you turn the fuzz to all of it?
It was one of those kind of tones that just kept catching my ear. You know, certain riffs you'd be like, that is really cool. That's a really nice tone. Nice. Really interesting.
That's good. So yeah, I enjoyed it when I gave it the chance it deserved.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so ratings for the Pornography of Ruin by Hush. I think it's a 3.5 for me. I think it will scratch a particular itch when the mood strikes. Is what I'm going to say. I think I love the fact that they've evolved as a band. I'm really happy they haven't just put out another album that sounds like Unexist. But had I heard the album before, you can hear the transition of them moving toward this from that last album. Really interesting album. It's quite long. Does demand a chunk of your time, but give it a listen in full. I wouldn't dip into one track. I don't think you would really pick up what they're trying to achieve on the album by listening to one single or two singles. Have a listen to the album. I know it's like 56 minutes, but give it a bash. Even if you're into sludge, doom, post metal, definitely worth a listen. I'll go 3.5 on this one. Duncan?
I'm siding with you for pretty much the same reasons. I can't really add anything on top of that. This is an album I will revisit, but it might be like twice this year. I think. The stars will have to align in a particular way when I'm with that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to swing at that Hush album at like 2:30 in the morning when everything's weird, which it always is at 2:30. So
yeah,
it's a good Halloween album. After the kids have gone to bed.
I like where you're going with everything right
now. Kyle, what's your rating?
You know, I feel bad giving it anything less than a 4.
Oh,
I quite liked it. Yeah,
nice, Kyle. Nice, I like it.
My type of thing.
Awesome. So Hush, the Pornography of Ruin, is out on June 24th. I will put in links to the Facebook, to the Bandcamp. Check it out. I think they've released a couple of singles. Have a listen, see what you think. When the album drops, give it a full listen.
Do the album. I'm with Dave on that one. I think like my brain would break even trying to think of what I would want to listen to out with the context of the whole album now. You know what I mean? To me, it's the full album experience or not at all.
Yeah, for sure. That is the review. Thanks for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.